Good afternoon. How's everyone today? Good. All right. At this time, we're going to start the public meeting for the Rincon Phase 2 Decommissioning Draft Environmental Impact Report. It's May 2nd, 2024 at 2 p.m. Welcome and thank you all for coming. We appreciate your interest in the environmental review of this project. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the project areas are located on the traditional territory and homelands of the Chumash people. Since time immemorial, the Chumash have lived on this coast, fished these waters in a relationship of balance and sustainability. Through informed, intentional action, we demonstrate our respect for our ongoing trust relationship with the Chumash, who are essential stewardship partners of the state's lands and resources. My name is Cynthia Herzog. I'm a senior environmental scientist with the California State Lands Commission, the Division of Environmental Science, Planning, and Management. And I am overseeing the preparation of the Environmental Impact Report, or EIR, in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. With me today is Nicole Dabrowski, Chief of the Division, Simon Poulter and Jennifer Layton with Padre Associates, the consultant retained for this project. I'd like to go over a few logistics and details. There are sign-in sheets available in the back so we can have a complete record of attendance at the meeting and so that you can be added to our mailing list to receive notices regarding the EIR and the project. We also have speaker slips in the back table for those who would like to speak on the content of the draft EIR. The slips can also be used to provide brief written comments on the back of the form. You can also email or mail your comments to the relevant addresses in the notice of availability. Additional copies of the notice are also available in the back. The 60-day comment period will end on May 15th, 2024. Next slide, please. The meeting agenda will consist of an introduction and meeting purpose, background and proposed project description, the CEQA process, public comment, followed by closing remarks. We're having a second session at 6 p.m. tonight. You don't need to sign up and speak at both sessions to have your comments recorded. The purpose of this meeting is to obtain agency, tribal, and public input and comment on the draft Environmental Impact Report. All oral comments presented today will be recorded and transcribed and joined with written comments to inform the Commission's final analysis of the project. Next slide. Rincon Island is located approximately 7 miles northwest of the city of Ventura and is located in approximately 55 feet of water. A causeway connects the island to the coast. On the landward end, the causeway is connected to an abutment that is surrounded by a protective rock revetment. The onshore facility is a 6-acre parcel owned by the state located 1.3 miles to the east of Rincon Island off of the Pacific Coast Highway. The State Coastal Conservancy parcel, included in the decommissioning analysis, is located just east of the causeway landing. Next slide. The 3 phases of Rincon planning and decommissioning are shown on the current slide. Phase 1 of the Rincon decommissioning included the plugging and abandonment of all oil and gas wells and removal of surface equipment on Rincon Island, the onshore facility, and the adjacent privately owned Coast Ranch parcel, and removal of the oil and gas pipelines from the causeway. Phase 1 activities were completed in June 2021. Phase 2 of the Rincon decommissioning effort, our current phase, includes preparation of the feasibility study, which was completed in August of 2022, public outreach, analysis and preparation of the EIR, and the final Commission certification of the EIR and their approval of the specific project. Phase 3 will consist of securing funding and implementation of the project decommissioning plan selected by the Commission after the CEQA process is complete. Next slide. These photos show the current condition of Rincon Island and the wharf. As you can see, very few structures remain on the island. The island is currently under caretaker status, which includes daily monitoring. Here are photos of the onshore facility and the pipeline connection valve box, landward of the causeway where the pipeline decommissioning would take place. Finally, this photo shows the State Coastal Conservancy parcel located adjacent to the base of the causeway, which is also included as part of the proposed project. This flowchart shown here was prepared to clarify the Phase 2 decision process and reiterate that the process allows for ongoing public, tribal, and agency engagement. AB 52 tribal consultation is taking place as part of the CEQA process. The red line box indicates where we are. A feasibility study was prepared as a preliminary concept level study to support Commission's selection of a proposed project for analysis in the EIR. The final feasibility study was released on July 21st, 2022, and can be found on the Commission's website. On August 23rd, 2022, the Commission approved staff's recommendation for selection of a project to be analyzed in the EIR. Next slide. At the same meeting, the Commission voted to exclude the complete removal of Rincon Island from analysis in the EIR. Additionally, the Commission discussed the potential for future co-management opportunities with the coastal band of the Chumash Nation. These discussions are ongoing. At this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Simon Poulter to discuss the EIR process.
Thank you, Cindy. Good afternoon. Simon Poulter with Padre Associates. I'm here with Jen Layton, who actually was the project manager, or is the project manager for preparation of both the feasibility study and the EIR, and she is the one responsible for the hours of reading pleasure. So anyway, let's get into the process here. As Cindy indicated, we are now in the formal portion of the analysis for the ultimate disposition of the Rincon facilities, and currently preparing or in the EIR phase. This part of the effort is really focused in providing you, the public, an option to evaluate a variety of options that we've described in the impact analysis. This is all tiered off the original feasibility study, which is not a typical step in a project like this. Right now, we are going to be receiving your comments on the EIR. They will not be formally addressed today. They will be addressed in written format, as we will also be receiving written comments on the EIR during this public comment period. Once we have all those comments, we will take them, prepare a final document which will include responses to your comments, and then make that available to you and the final decision makers. So you can kind of see in this slide that the tentative schedule that we are looking at for completion by the end of the year of this process. Next slide, please. As you heard from Cindy, the proposed project was actually selected by the Commission at the completion of the feasibility study. And in that, we've proposed a series of actions associated with these facilities which relate to the preparation of the island for potential future use. This will include removal of the remaining structures on the surface of the island itself, and then the remediation of soil that is contaminated within the core of that island. And that remediation will be worked with the state as far as the cleanup and requirements. In addition, the causeway will be retained in its current configuration. The onshore pipelines that run from the causeway underneath Highway 101 and to that valve box that was pictured in the earlier slide will be abandoned, mostly in place. It will be grouted and retained in that area. The onshore parcel, the parcel further to the south, will be remediated. There's a variety of remediation options that are actually looked at in the EIR. The 5 options are outlined in detail, but range in very proactive digging and removal of that contamination to on-site remediation. And then finally, the SCC parcel, we looked at 3 potential options for that, including some upgrades to both the vegetation and access to the site, as well as potential shore protection. So the project and the project breakdown is really what we focused on. Next slide, please. As required by CEQA, we reviewed a variety of issues, both physical, biological, and social cultural issues. And this list outlines those key elements that we analyzed in the EIR, as well as some of the additional sections that are not necessarily, such as cumulative impacts, growth inducement, climate change, recreational fishing, and environmental justice, which is not part of the actual checklist for the CEQA document. Next slide, please. One of the areas that there was a lot of discussion during the feasibility study, and one of the things that helped guide us in selection of the final project, and then the alternatives we looked at, were also included in EIR. I will say that under normal circumstances, the alternatives are designed to reduce potential impacts that are identified during the EIR preparation for the proposed project, but because of the situation here where we had the advantage of the screening during the feasibility study, we actually have a project that really addresses the majority of those impacts. But despite that, we did look at a variety of impacts or variety of alternatives. The first one is reefing, which really is retention of the island in its current state, but the removal of the contaminated soil from it. The causeway and associated abutments would be removed, and the abutment area would be retained, and the riprap would be retained in that area to basically maintain that area, but we would remove the concrete headland there. So that's for the island itself. The onshore components would be similar as far as the amount of remediation that would occur. The second alternative is the partial causeway removal, or AKA call it a short pier. But there we would take advantage of removing the majority of the pier and leaving a portion of it closer to shore to potentially be a recreational facility. The third alternative we looked at really related more specifically to the retention of the onshore portion of where the causeway leaves the mainland, and the revetment and the abutment that is located there. In this alternative, again, the causeway would be removed, but we would retain that abutment area as part of that, and this was designed to address concerns about the changes to the coastline in that area. And then finally, the last alternative we looked at was the offshore disposal, which was designed to address truck trips through the area. And instead of transporting contaminated soil from the island, that would be placed on barges and shipped down to Port Hueneme for ultimate onshore disposal. And last, but as always required by CEQA, we did have to acknowledge the no project alternative, which is basically leaving it in its current state. Next slide, please. During the feasibility study, as well as during the notice of preparation when we were getting started on the EIR, a number of studies were undertaken to address issues that were raised during that process. And in particular, we looked at the potential causeway alternatives, which were discussed earlier, and what potential impacts would occur should that causeway be changed or removed completely. In one study by Griggs 2022, as listed here, we did do a look at what has happened to the beach on either side of the causeway prior to the construction of the island and the causeway, and both after those facilities were constructed. And the conclusions of those really demonstrated that the beach is not affected by the causeway itself, but more the rocky headland that sits there. To that end, the next study that was looked at was, another second study that we worked with Coastal Frontiers to do a surf analysis, because again, concerns were raised about potential impacts to surfing and recreational use around the causeway should it removed. In that study, which, by the way, all of these studies that I'm mentioning are in the appendices of the EIR and also summarized in the document themselves, was what impact would either the removal of the pier or the rocky abutment area associated with that rocky headland. That study again concluded that the surf was actually dominated by the rocky headland that had been there historically and subsequently augmented by the abutment area, but that naturally occurring rock was the predominant focus of the surf break there, and not the abutment that was part of that. And also that the pier itself was not causing impacts to the surf because the surf break was actually occurring up coast of the causeway, not as it hit the causeway. So some key study results helped us evaluate that component. The third study we looked at was, and any of you who are local residents have seen a considerable amount more of bird activity around the island since the decommissioning of the facilities and the abandonment of the wells. We did do drone surveys and a variety of on-site surveys to determine what bird activity was occurring. The predominant bird activity is the brown pelican, cormorants, gulls, and rock pigeons. But at this point, they're just using it as a roosting site. We have not seen active nesting going on, which was one of the things that we wanted to make sure. We'll continue to monitor that, but at least during the study, no nesting activity was occurring there. So that was the predominant. And that, maintaining if the structures were to change, such as the removal of the causeway, would that have a significant impact on bird use of the area? And the conclusion was that the island is the primary focus and that the spillover of bird use out there onto the causeway is only secondary. And finally, the last focused technical study was a dive survey done on the actual pier pilings. Those of you who reviewed the feasibility study, we did do an extensive marine biological survey around the island itself using UCSB's expertise. But there was concern about the removal of the pier pilings and its potential impact on the habitat in the area. The conclusion of that study actually identified, although that the pilings did provide some habitat value, the natural rocky outcrops that actually occurred just offshore of the causeway entrance to the from the headland area was actually much more diverse than the pilings in and of themselves. So removal of the pilings was not believed to be a significant biological impact based on that survey. So at this point, I'll turn it back to Cindy to talk about the next steps on the project schedule.
Thank you. As I previously mentioned, the draft DIR was released for public review on March 15th, 2024. This public meeting is solely to hear comments on the draft DIR. The Commission is not taking any action on the project today. Additionally, while other governmental agencies may rely on this EIR for their own independent actions or approvals in the future, the Commission is not taking any action to either support or oppose any actions or approvals by other agencies. We will now open up for comments on the draft DIR. Next slide. Oh, that's somebody else. Okay. Sorry, I thought it was mine. It's like, oh, my daughter's calling me. Staff will not be responding to comments at this time unless there is a question regarding process and next steps. Comments we're interested in receiving may address specific components of the analysis regarding significant environmental impacts or proposed mitigation by providing substantive comments that point out errors, inconsistencies, or data omissions. Should provide references, evidence, or other factual support for the comment, and should be objective instead of a personal opinion. While submitting personal views on the proposed project is not prohibited, these types of non-substantive comments may not receive a specific response in the final EIR. Please try to limit your testimony to 3 minutes and to these issues. The comments will be recorded, so please introduce yourself first and then speak as clearly as possible. Your comments will become part of the administrative record. Jennifer, if we could start with the speaker slips.
Okay. I'll name the first 3 speakers just so you're kind of aware of who's coming next. You will be given 3 minutes to speak. I have a clock here that I will turn on so you're aware of the time. Our first speaker will be Dan Reddick, followed by Dennis Longwill, and then followed by Marjorie Badger. Mr. Reddick, if you may approach, or if you can please approach the podium and then begin your comment.
A little bit of speed reading going on here. It's like those legal things at the end of a commercial, so I do apologize as I will be speaking fast. My name's Dan Reddick, and I'm a resident of Muscle Shoals and live right across the street from the SCC parcel. Okay, oh shoot. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I support the project as defined by the State Lands Commission to keep the island, causeway, pier, abutment, reevement, and the SCC parcel. Retention of sand on the west side of the abutment and recreational opportunities need to be protected and maintained. I support the conclusion of option 3, riprap protection for the SCC parcel. A managed retreat or cobble berm would endanger the community, whereas riprap protection is a proven method to safeguard property and prevent further erosion. I do not support the reefing, abutment, or partial causeway alternatives for numerous reasons, but time will not allow me to address those. The SCC parcel in particular, removal of the concrete structures. The concrete structures at the far east side of the SCC parcel property are integral to the seawall that protects the community. Removal of the concrete structures will leave a hole and allow undercutting of the protective structures currently in place. Per the draft EIR, the State Lands Commission has no plan to address the need to install additional riprap to protect this area. In addition, the draft EIR does not mention the true history of how the riprap in the early 1990s was approved by the Coastal Commission and installed by the residents of Muscle Shoals. Riprap versus cobble bermback. The cobble bermback berm is a very risky solution. However, the Coastal Commission desires this option. They state that riprap causes more erosion and costs a lot to maintain. Please note the riprap added by the residents in 1990 has required 0 maintenance and caused 0 more erosion. I understand the Coastal Commission would like to replicate the success of the managed retreat at the Ventura Fairgrounds. However, the conditions at Muscle Shoals are much different. If you read the updates on the Fairgrounds Phase 1 project, the success there is highly contingent on the sediment deposits from the Ventura River. As you all know, we don't have a river adjacent to this. The bluff elevation, if the option to add riprap to protect the SCC parcel is accepted, the existing elevation needs to be maintained in order to maintain the current drainage. If the bluff elevation is raised, water will not sheet into the ocean as it does today. I do have a survey of the bluff that was performed by a licensed surveyor a few years ago if that information is needed by you. Bitumen and tar sands. At the toe of the slope of the bluff of the SCC parcel, there's a bitumen or tar soaked sand seam. A cobbleback berm to protect the SCC parcel may actually activate that tar flow, much like the tar pits and carpentry that continually ooze out through the ground there. Revegetation. We'd just like to ask you guys, would you please allow us to have some input regarding what you replant and how that kind of looks out there? Because in the draft EIRs, there's 0 information. You basically say we're going to take out some stuff and add some stuff, but there's really no profiles. What's it going to do to us from a visual impact standpoint? We'd just like to be a part of the process. No environmental study, to the best of my knowledge, or detailed hazardous materials analysis was never done on the site, and cultural studies were never performed. The report fails to mention that or address a large area of asphalt on the SCC parcel that will need to be removed and exported off the site. In general, the whole SCC parcel section of the draft EIR needs to be revisited, reissued for review and comment prior to any decision-making process for the project. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Dennis Longwell.
Thank you. My name is Dennis Longwell, and together with my wife, Jeanette, we live at 6628 Old Pacific Coast Highway. We have been full-time residents of Muscle Shoals for 18 years. First of all, I'd like to thank the State Lands Commission for keeping the community informed of the process for decommissioning the oil operations on Rincon Island. Over the past few years, the communication lines have been kept open. We appreciate that our thoughts and concerns have been heard and included in the assessment. We agree that the recommendation offered by the CSLC and described in the draft EIR as the project, we understand that this, if this recommendation is adopted by the California Coastal Commission, the island and causeway, abutment structure, and protective revetment would remain in place. It appears that this would be the most cost-effective and environmentally sound plan moving into Phase 3. This would also preserve the unique aesthetic appeal of these structures and leave options for future reuse of this property by the state. We also believe that the use of the offshore disposal alternative described in Section 5.4.5 would be the best option for removal of contaminated materials and for replenishment of the island's soils. This option would eliminate the estimated 2,000 truck trips across the causeway and through the neighborhood. Instead, there would be a large-capacity ocean-going barge designed to receive and transport these materials as we understand it. It would require only 5 trips from the island to the shore. This would reduce traffic, noise, air pollution, and potential exposure to hazardous materials. Quoting from the document, it says, additionally, the offshore disposal alternative meets all of the other project objectives outlined in Section 1.2.2, unquote. With regard to the SCC parcel, we believe that option 3 provides the most sustainable plan for this sensitive area. It is best suited to slow the erosion of the bluffs and maintain the property for the public to enjoy. We support option 3 and would like to see a more detailed description of its implementation. Thank you again for allowing the community to express our thoughts on this project.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Marjorie Badger. Please approach the podium and state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Marjorie Badger. We've been homeowners there since 1987, and it's been the heart of our family and a dream come true. We probably have the smallest place there, but we probably enjoy it more than anybody else. So, we bought this in 1987. As Mr. Reddick mentioned, in 1992, we applied to the Coastal Conservancy and all the other different agencies that were necessary. I had a stack of paperwork my husband did like this, but we finally reached an agreement after using engineering and attorneys and whatever that they allowed us to prevent more erosion in that section of the SCC property in front of the homes. And we did agree, and we spent maybe over $100,000 on riprap. My concern for bringing this up is that they approved it at that time, but they don't mention it in any of these reports that this work had been done at that time. And Cobble wouldn't do anything to protect that area. The riprap would be the best solution for the SCC in protection of their property and our homes. The next thing was that they stated the argument also from the SCC at the time was that we were going to put in 4 pound, and they said that their manual recommends 7 pound. So they are aware that riprap is the best solution for protecting that area in the future. As far as removing that giant concrete piece, that's probably the most protection we're getting right now from the ground in the area that wants to be used for public walking. So that would be a huge mistake to remove that. And if anybody has been down there to really look into what's existing in the front of that now, they'd see that you could stick a 5-foot-long stick in areas where the water is already rushing in under that property and towards the street. There's already that weakness existing right now on that property. But I doubt that anyone's really been down there to see and notice those holes. The causeway is vital to, if anybody that's in this report has been there when there's been a huge storm, there's no doubt that wave action completely over the causeway is not helping to block some of the danger of erosion in that property. Truthfully, I feel the island causeway and the buffer of 65 years should be a state historical monument, just like the thousands of people that drive along the California coast now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Do you mean that you think that the pier causeway does help protect things?
They're watching that storm.
Yeah, I think you said it didn't help. You think it does?
Absolutely, I watched it. It lessens the impact.
Our next speaker is Neela Beam, and she'll be followed by Robert Bruner. Please approach the podium and state your name for the record. Thank you.
Well, I really don't know what to say, but I would like to say that we live in front of the ice plant, and we have never had any complaints.
Could you just state your name and where you live for the record?
Oh, sorry, Neela Beam. I live at 6651 Muscle Shoals, Breakers Way. So the ice plant that is in front of, I think, 5 homes, it stays green all year. There's no maintenance to it, and it grows beautiful flowers, yellow and purple, and I don't see why taking that out is a big deal, or the bench, park bench. That park bench is a history maker. I mean, people have been proposed to, have been crying there and telling stories, and it's a beautiful place just to sit for 10 minutes or just have some private thoughts. So I would just like to express my concern about what you want to do instead of the ice plant. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Robert Bruner. Please approach the podium and state your name for the record.
Hi, folks. Name's Robert Bruner, resident of Muscle Shoals, 52 years, 6640 Old PCH. I'd love to see the causeway stay, the pier stay, of course, the island. It sounds like that's going to happen there. I think the rock riprap is important to help that area. We've had so much erosion in the 52 years I've lived there. It's amazing where your property lines used to be and where they are now. If you did take that pier out, I'm really concerned about the sand flows. I'm a retired building contractor, built 6 houses at Freya. After they took oil piers out, all that sand ended up down at Freya. It was as high as their seawalls. You need to understand the sand flow when you remove a pier, it really changes the dynamics of the beach there. Living on Muscle Shoals is like living at a state park without the park ranger. When you guys do some work there, particularly in that area where Nelia said the ice plant is, and do a little park there, who's going to maintain it? There's not an agency that picks up trash, cleans up anything on the beaches. Our community does that because we love where we live. Also, I'd like to see, when I built my house in 1990, I had to do it a certain time of year because of designated coastal commission species. Are you going to do the pier in a certain time of year when you work out there? That's a good question. I think also we need to protect the Coastal Commission tide pools there, not only from the debris that might come off of that island and pier, but also there's a lot of people that take a lot of stuff out of those tide pools. I've asked for signage for years from the different agencies. They tell me to do it. I'm a retired building contractor. I'm not getting on that merry-go-round again. But anyhow, guys, thanks for working on it. And if anybody wants to talk to me about any of these issues, I'm available. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. At this time, I do not have any other speaker slips for anyone who would like to speak during the meeting. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak who did not yet fill out a speaker slip? Please approach the podium and state your name for the record. Thank you.
Hi, how are you guys? Good. My name's Todd Coolidge. I live at 6727 Breakers Way, which is the street that parallels the ocean. I am the president of the Breakers Way Property Association. So I speak for some of us there. Let me just say I back the project as it is today. I think the riprap option is the best for the SCC parcel. The pier is great for us, all of us, for carp, for Rincon in general, for Ventura. I can't tell you how many times I'm walking my dogs and people stop and say, "What's that? What's that? Can I go out there?" All these things. And I think the pier, the island, the causeway, everything kind of gives us in this room, us who live in this area, something to be proud of. And to pull that down would be a shame. So keeping the project as is, I think, is something you guys really need to fight for. I think from a standpoint of the abutment, Oceanside, San Clemente, they're paying tens of millions of dollars, Newport Beach, to put out these abutments, to put out stone piers, if you will, to stop that sand from flowing down south. We already have something. As a community, we don't have to pay tens of millions of dollars because that abutment does the work for us. To pull that out, from Padre's perspective, you guys do this for a living. You probably give input to companies or to cities to keep that sand. How do we keep our sand in front of our beach for people who come visit, for local people, for dogs, for you name it, for our environment? For Padre to not understand that, I know you guys do. If we keep the abutment, we're saving tens of millions of dollars 20 years from now. So don't let that go, especially that, because that's keeping the surf, that's keeping our bird life healthy, it's keeping our fish life healthy. We really need to work at keeping our sand, keeping the abutment, and taking care of these poor folks who are sitting on that SCC parcel who really need that riprap wrapped around. It'll cause a total abutment for us and to keep the sand for all the surfers, all the community, and all the environment. So I think for us, I think these things are really critical. I know you said the decision makers aren't here, they're somewhere else. Personally, it's a problem that they're not here. So we have to rely on you to send this message forward to them. And this is a big deal for us. Big deal certainly for these people, but also for you guys, because you're representing all of CARP, all of Rincon, anyone who ever visits our surf spots, one of the top surf spots in the world, as well as our Muscle Shoals, our La Conchita people, and everyone in Ventura who comes up to our beaches. So if you would, do your best to stand for us when time comes to talk to the decision makers. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else in the room left who would like to make a comment?
Okay, in that case, the session's comment period has been concluded. Just a reminder that the written comments must be received by Wednesday, May 15th, 2024. This slide details how to submit your comments. Excuse me, May 15th, did I say?
Friday.
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Oh, I'm sorry, Friday. This slide details how to submit your comments to the commission staff. This information is also on that notice of availability that we discussed before. Copies are in the back. Before I close the session, I just wanted to mention that after this document, after we go through your comments that everyone is sending in and that you've given us today, and we incorporate those into a final document, and we schedule this project to go to our commission, that you are going to have a chance to write a letter directly to those people who make the decisions. Keep that in mind, that you will be able to. There won't be another meeting until the commission meeting, but prior to that, thank you. Prior to that, you will have a chance to write a letter directly to the California State Lands Commissioners and have them look at that before the meeting, okay? As well as go to the meeting and make comments. We don't know exactly where that's going to be held yet, do we?
It should be somewhere down here on the Central Coast, but we don't have a specific location yet.
Yeah, we're hoping that it will be August. That's what we're aiming for. So you will have another chance to talk directly to those decision makers. Okay?
Would that be the final decision report at that time?
For the EIR, yes.
There is an error in the slide. It is Wednesday, May 15th, so we apologize for that.
Yeah,
The
sorry
date
about
is
that.
correct, the day of the week is incorrect.
Yeah, we'll have to change that. Okay. At this time, I will close the first of two sessions of the public meeting. The second session will begin at 6 p.m. tonight at the same location. As stated earlier, you do not need to sign up or speak at both sessions to have your comments recorded, and I do thank you for coming.